And for those of you that came from the other side, if you already started looking at the minutes, I just went ahead and dropped those in the chat so that you'll have them available to review when we get to that part of our presentation.
You're live.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and start recording. Brian, go ahead and start cloud recording.
Okay.
Got it?
Give me one moment.
Okay.
You good, Brian?
Yeah, I'm just trying to record here.
Okay.
I just need to reclaim host. Hold on. Okay. Okay, it's connecting to the server. We are now recording on the cloud.
Okay, perfect. Well, welcome again, everyone. And for those watching via live stream, we apologize for the delay. There was a bit of technical difficulties that we have since addressed. So we can go to the next slide. And so I am Tiara Booker-Dwyer, the Deputy Superintendent of Student Outcomes and School Quality. We are going to begin with some opening remarks, introduction of guests, and approval of the agenda, minutes, and public comment before transitioning into the core of our agenda. And are there any guests, Robin, I'm just looking at you, are there any other guests on the call?
There's nobody on the call that is not a routine person for our team. There's no new guests. It's us regular members.
Okay, perfect. And so I will turn it over to Dr. Jessica Jones for approval of the agenda and minutes.
Morning. So I will say before we move into the approval of the agenda as presented, one of the items that's listed on here would be item number 1, and it's under the description of review of new assessment opportunities. I do want to note that we already voted on that. We did have a piece of public comment back in the fall, but I think this may have been a typo.
On the agenda?
Yes.
It is not a typo. In a couple of our meetings, there was a request for us to bring it back with Malik to provide some more information. So it is not a typo. We did already vote for it. We're bringing it back to provide that extra information and allow the team to make another decision. That came out of our last meeting where there was a request in one of the committee meetings to bring this back with more information.
So that's why it's not included in the actual agenda, because it does say ABTEL previously presented material at the request. So it came from subcommittee is what you're saying.
Yes, ma'am.
So is there a way that you can edit it to say they came from subcommittee and not the full committee? Because
sure,
the
I can do that.
Committee did actually vote on these items and we did vote them down. That's why I wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, it can be edited for sure.
Okay. With that being said, I'll open the floor. I heard somebody.
I'm sorry, there was just a minute ago, there were multiple conversations going on. I couldn't pick up between who was talking. So sorry about that.
Okay. So I'll open the floor to a motion and a second of the agenda with the modification as requested and acknowledged.
So moved.
Andy Cox moves.
Susan Trainer, second.
Susan seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, like sign? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Next, we have approval of the minutes. As Rob indicated, he's put the link to the minutes inside the chat to give you an opportunity to review. This too requires a motion and a second.
Susan Trainer, so moved.
Douglas Arnold, second.
Thank you. So Susan Trainer moves, Douglas Arnold seconds. Is there any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. Next up, we have public comment. So Rob, I'll yield the floor back to you regarding public comment.
Thank you. We do not have public comment. I will go ahead and put the guidelines for public comment up for those to view, even though we do not have public comment today. I want to note that in the future, or at least for now, I will be the point of contact for public comment. We've changed it on our documents and on our website. Alice has retired, and so we do not want all the public comment to go to her in her retirement. So it will now come to me for now. And I've put my email and my contact information up. But as we have no public comment as of today, we are okay to move on to the next phase of our agenda, if so desire.
Hearing
Okay,
none,
we can advance. No, go ahead, Dr. Jones.
okay, we'll go ahead and move on with presentations. First on the agenda is Mr. Malik McKinley, review of new assessment opportunities as it is listed.
Good morning, Mr. McKinley. I will pull up your presentation unless you want to drive it yourself.
I can certainly do so.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing and let you share.
Okay. Good morning. I assume everyone can see my screen,
Yes, sir.
and
We can.
I put it in presentation mode, so hopefully it's larger on screen.
It
We
just
do not
shows,
see it in
yeah, your
the
individual
presentation
screen.
mode.
Yeah, it's not showing presentation mode.
No.
And I'm watching you click it too.
Uh, Give me 1 second.
Now it's in presentation.
Okay, great. All right. I know that I believe there are a few new board members here. So just wanted to take some time just to kind of walk through just a little bit of who we are. Again, my name is Malik McKinley. I serve as a Director of Educational Partnerships at ETS. I've been at ETS for almost 15 years and work with the state of Virginia. So if there are folks on the call that need a contact at at ETS, I can serve as that main contact to put you in contact with any information, data, or other services that you may need from ETS. As I move through the slides, I just want to make sure I am on my content slide, table of content. Okay. All right. So as we walk through just a little bit, just real quickly for anyone that doesn't know who ETS is, we are a nonprofit organization founded in 1947. Our mission is to advance quality and equity in education for all people worldwide. And for folks in the room, you know us from developing the Praxis program as well as other tests such as GRE. We developed the SAT and ACT for College Board. We developed TOEFL and TOEIC exams for foreign language, for students outside of the country who want to come here to work or come here to go to school. 50 million assessments are developed, administered, and scored every year here at ETS in 180 countries in over 9,000 locations. As we talk about the Praxis program, we are in about 40 plus states, including the state of Virginia. And we serve as the main licensure program in the state of Virginia. We support educators on their journey from truly in inception all the way through to professional development as you think about some of the assessments, products, and services that we offer in the Praxis program. So we're continuing to think about all the tools that we can bring to bear to help candidates to first of all, build interest in the field, and then also to help candidates along their journey, to matriculate through their journey, and then also becoming a teacher of record, and then also supporting them to maintain them in the classroom or to keep them in the classroom on a long-term basis. We're here in Virginia to help solve all of the needs as it relates to teachers, and that's one of our main goals as we work with the Department of Education. So in terms of what Praxis is, again, just very quickly for anyone that may be new, we are the teacher licensure program in the state of Virginia. As I mentioned, we're in 40 plus states. We offer exams from the core academic skills for educators exam to all of the licensure tests, which would be a biology test, a mathematics test, social studies, elementary education, special education, the whole battery of Praxis kind of covers every single possible academic area, foreign languages, etc. And then we are we also operate when you think about the Praxis program, we also have tests that focus on actual teaching performance. So if that is ever of interest in the state of Virginia, there are a lot of different products and services that we can bring to Virginia beyond traditional Praxis tests. For example, we offer a Pro Ethica exam assessment, which focuses on the ethics, educator ethics that candidates have to have as they're building their understanding of the field. So there are a lot of different pieces of the Praxis program. I believe we are here to talk about a couple assessments real quickly. And one thing to note as we talk about a few tests here, the first one is school librarian.
Malik, are you advancing your presentation as you're talking?
Yes, I am.
Because
Are you?
it's still on the contents page. I got the feeling that you were seeing multiple. Is everybody else seeing the contents page? Yeah.
Yes, that's the only one that we've seen so far.
Ah, okay. All right. Well, these were intro slides anyway. How's this here?
We're now on school librarian.
Okay. All right. So with the school librarian 5312, Overall changes, and I know we've had this discussion before, so if there's anything that, and so this will kind of be a refresher for folks that were in the room several months ago. If there are any questions or anything that you may need after this kind of brief discussion, I can certainly turn back to our assessment development team, our research team to pull any additional information to help you understand a little bit more about these few exams here. But the purpose of school librarian, it's aligned, align the test with the updated standards, terminology, and trends. And that's one of the main goals or main reasons why we made changes to this particular test, updated terminology, and there were changes to the category weightings for this exam, aligned to the latest standards. And as you see with the weighting, um, there are various categories that changed weighting, so that changed the number of questions. The overall time for this exam is 120 minutes. So as you think about as you think about some of the changes in this assessment, we had changes in weighting. As you think about the shift in some parts of this assessment, we did change some of the terminology, and I'm not gonna read everything on screen here, but there were name changes to categories. There were addition and subtractions of content, of specific content in this assessment. And this, again, this redesign work was in alignment with the American Association of School Librarians. As you can see on screen, you're looking at the alignment to national standards and see the coverage from each individual area. And on screen, you also have the study companion here. So as I mentioned, in terms of the overall categories, you see the content categories listed here, from program administration to professional development, leadership, and advocacy. Number of questions, approximate percentage of the exam. This exam is 2 hours long. It is computer delivered unless there is a need for an additional accommodation. And there are 120 questions. We held the last multi-state study for this exam was in 2021 with 11 panelists in 8 states. And there was a recommendation of 63 out of 100 raw score points, which equated to a 154 on this particular test. And it's currently used by 28 states and territories. Passing rate thus far is just below 90%. And Rob, as we talk about these few exams, do you want to just kind of walk through the same slides here
Why don't we
or take a
pause for
pause?
just a second to see if there's any questions about the first one? Just to provide that opportunity if anyone wants to stay focused on library before they go to theater. Does anybody have any questions or comments that they'd like to volunteer?
I'll jump in real quick, Rob, just with a comment, because I was in that breakout session where a few of the members at that time had asked just for some follow-up about the assessments. And part of the focus was, and Malik, I was wondering if you could just speak even just to the process of this. It was, what process does ETS go through to align the assessments to the standards? And I know you showed those national standards. How is that also kind of connected to or looked at in the scope of Virginia standards? So maybe just a basic kind of overview, because that should overlap for all 3 assessments. And in the breakout session that we had, that was that primary concern was, okay, we got, the breakdown of each of the 3 assessments. There was, a good amount of deliberation in that meeting. And then a few of the members had just said, would be curious to know what that process looks like and what are some guarantees that they are aligned to the Virginia standards. And that was kind of the crux of bringing it back. So I don't know if you wanted to speak to that process a little bit if you can.
Sure, certainly. So overall in the test development process, we start with national standards. So our assessment development team brings together a group of experts, a group of K through 12 teachers, as well as faculty members from leading universities from across the nation to sit on what we call a national advisory committee. And that committee's main job is to look at the national standards for a particular field. So in the case of school librarian, they're looking at whatever the latest standards are from that academic discipline, and then they start to build or develop the test from there. But everything kind of starts with standards. And as they, in that initial meeting, they're looking at those particular standards, and then they build out what are called knowledge and skill statements, which are the most important statements for that particular field. And really the question is, okay, what is most important for a teacher to know as it relates to the field of school librarian or as it relates to the field of theater? And then once that's decided, we send out a survey to thousands of teachers across the nation so that they can also give us additional feedback as to what they believe is important, because a part of our validity process is to make sure that we have input from education stakeholders across the nation. So as we're continuing to do that, that information comes back to ETS. We continue to process that. We bring that committee back together. They're looking at standards again to see if there's anything that may have changed between the first time that they looked at the standards and this follow-up meeting. And then we start to kind of build the blueprint of the exam, which is what it's kind of like the scaffolding that you see in our study companion. That's kind of what's built out from our assessment development team, but it all traces back to the national standards. If there is a need for a specific alignment from whatever the Virginia standards are, if they deviate greatly from the national standards, then I can reach out to our assessment development department, have them look at whatever Virginia specific standards you have, align that, show an alignment between that and also these few exams, and then I can share that with you all before your next meeting if that is the piece that may be most critical here. But if there's alignment between Virginia standards in the field and also the national standards, then there's complete alignment with the national standards, or note that there's complete alignment between the national standards and ETS's standards for this particular exam.
Mr. McKinley, and Dr. Jones, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I do recall when we had this first presentation, discussion led to, and it was not just for theater, it was actually for each one of these, that there are skill-based standards that we have as well as knowledge-based standards. And some of the concern was that if this theater or any of the others was added, we would have a gap between the skills that you would have to be required to meet now through our current system if we went to just an assessment. We do have other areas that have the same issue, but is there anything you can say about the design of the test that would maybe either clarify or confirm that there are skills that a librarian would need to have but aren't necessarily reflected in the assessment that they would take? Because I know that was part of the holdup before. Dr. Jones, do you recall, am I accurate on that?
You are, and most of that skills-based did revolve around safety standards.
Yeah, definitely for the ag it did for sure.
Right,
And for theater, you're right, for
yes.
the set design and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But even beyond that, I think there was some discussion about, so let's say I'm an English teacher and I want to get my theater license. If we have this assessment, all I do is go take this test, and now I've been trained as an English teacher, but I've passed the theater test. What is the gap? What is missing that we should be aware of when we make a decision like this?
I mean that this is it sounds like a policy decision. I mean, there are states that have add-on endorsements where all you have to do is take 2 or 3 courses or take an assessment. And that's always, from a state policy perspective, depending on what the teacher shortage issues are in state. Um, Obviously taking a test is different than taking coursework, but the amount of knowledge needed to pass an assessment, I imagine a candidate or a teacher would have from coursework or from their professional experience in order to pass. But there's likely some things that are in courses that will not show up on the exam if that's the question here. When you consider some of these exams, there's a lot of content on these exams, but if you're actually talking about pedagogy or other types of practices that may not be demonstrated in a great deal on this test, then there might be need for coursework as another option here with adding on endorsements. But I don't know what the endorsement process is like in Virginia. If there are other exams where, if I'm a biology teacher, can I just add on a chemistry endorsement without taking coursework?
There are, and there, but in a lot of those cases, it is not a heavily hands-on, I guess, maybe. So
Mr.
I'd be
Gilstrap,
curious. Yep.
to that point, and that's where the conversation got extremely robust. We have a lot of hands-on, demonstrate physical tasks that need to be accounted for. And to Mr. Gilstrap's question, the test is one thing. You being able to perform a task physically and demonstrate your acumen for that test to the proficiency level is the other component. We see that in ag, we see that in theater. I think part of his question was, do we see that in library sciences? Like, what are those physical performance tasks that librarian needs to be able to show mastery of to say, yes, you can do this. And then support the part of having safety issues. So if I have to show performance in mechanics, specifically plasma welding, does this test actually show that I know how to do that and cover all the safety associated with it? And I'll just use that from an ag standpoint. You see that also in something to some extent tech ed, but then it was brought up back in the fall about theater arts, and I'm glad that we stopped here because of the set design and the amount of work that has to be done. And having an add-on doesn't necessarily demonstrate your ability to do those tasks proficiently or safely.
If there's not any other questions about theater, go ahead and continue on, Ms. McKinley.
Certainly. So as we're looking at theater, some of the same details here real quickly. 2 hours, 120 selected response questions delivered in a computer delivered format. You see the weightings here between categories: curriculum, instruction, and classroom practices, creating and performing, production, history, literature, and criticism. As you can see, the alignment between theater and the National Core Arts Standards. As you dig in a little bit in the study companion, you'll see the content categories listed here. And, I mean, a part of this conversation, I can reach back out to our assessment development department to ask them to provide specific examples from these 3 tests, if that is helpful, so that you can see beyond, because I think everybody has access to the study companion and the sample test questions. So two things I want to note here. One is I can provide interactive practice tests for all 3 of these exams so that folks that have questions about the actual content on the test, they can see the actual questions that are not necessarily on the exam, but questions that are part of the review process for these 3 academic areas. And then I can also ask our assessment development department to pull a few questions from the test so that you can see how classroom practice is implemented in this particular exam. Ron, did you? Okay. So that's just something that we can take note of here. Number one, if someone could forward me the specific Virginia standards that you would like to have aligned to these 3 tests, then I can have that prepared before next meeting. And then number 2, if there's interest in actually looking at test questions from these 3 tests, then I can pull interactive practice tests, share those. I can share 3 codes for everybody that's on this committee. And then at your leisure, you can take a look at those questions so that you can understand for yourself how pedagogy or how classroom practice or how teaching practice is brought about in these 3 exams.
So I just have a quick question.
Shirley?
So the test is designed to have anybody teach that class. My concern is safety, along with agriculture, and I'm assuming the librarian one as well. I think the test would probably be aligned with the standards. I don't think that's the question. I think the question is the safety piece of these 3 courses. I think being a theater major and having a 4-year degree in theater and fine arts, there's a lot that goes into that. And I would think that if you were going to give these tests as an option for all 3 of them, you would have some kind of endorsement attached to that because of the safety piece. Nobody wants to be dinged on something terrible happening. So I just want to put that out there because I do think with these 3, it's not like math. It's not like L's. It's not like any of that stuff. You're talking about safety procedures and precautions. So I just want to put that out there because I do think that that is a big piece of this. And so, anyway.
Exactly, Megan. That was from our past discussions. That's where I was coming from as well. It's one thing to be able to use the example earlier of designing a set so that visually you get the interior of a castle or whatever, but building it so that you've got a wall that's 8 feet tall and 12 feet long, and it's not going to fall over on somebody. Or my area is with lighting, and so I've got lights hanging over students that are 10, 20 feet up in the air. And if one of those is not hung properly, something can fall and land on someone. And I don't think you can give the skills required purely on a written test. It needs to be hands-on execution. Do you know how to anchor this properly? Do you know how to clamp it properly? Build it so that it is structurally sound, etc. Those are my concerns.
I had a question, Megan, and you are a theater teacher, so maybe you can answer this. In the school divisions that I've worked in, and my daughter was a theater student, usually the principals of the schools where the plays and the productions were going on had school facilities helping with the construction of the sets and running all of the lighting and everything. It wasn't the drama teacher that was doing it. And when I look at the licensure regs for theater arts, we do have some teachers who are the theater arts majors, education majors, which is probably the pathway you took. But we do have many that do the add-on by coursework, and there's only through that pathway 3 credit hours required in technical theater. That's just one class currently, which is the route through coursework. And I don't know that one 3-credit class is going to enable someone to really know how to build a set like Ron was describing. I certainly wouldn't want someone running the lights in a production like that if they didn't have the technical skill. And I really thought most of the time facilities took over and did that part of a play when productions were going on in school auditoriums. Am I wrong thinking that?
So
That
not
it wasn't
all,
necessarily the teacher, but the principal's ultimately responsible for what's going on in his or her building. And they would always have IT and facilities and those types of people taking care of that piece of a production like that going on.
so some of the schools are like that. A lot of the bigger counties are like that, but some of the smaller counties, some of the teachers do a lot of it. There's like one other person that helps them. And so that is a concern because you have 2 people and you don't have because they might wear multiple hats. So you've got all these people trying to put on a production that might not necessarily be facility people and might not be, you know what I mean? The director and the teachers are heavily involved, and just the safety piece is one part, like performance is another. Like I just think that it's too hands-on, but that's just me, I guess. But it's too hands-on of a course to give it to anybody. That's how I feel, but I could be wrong.
So Shelby, I want to answer your question. I also see that Delegate Keys Kamara has her hand up. So I will say from personal experience, the drama teacher had to build the sets and I was the one helping them do that because I was the licensed human. So there is a safety precaution and it's a licensure issue. We just don't have folks coming in doing that. And to Megan's point, some of our larger school divisions might have the capacity to do that. And I would even be kind of leaning in on, most of them probably are straying away from that because of the liability issue. But if you don't know how to do it, you don't do it because you can cause somebody to lose a life. And to Ron's point, you don't want that being a junior high kid, 6th, 7th grade, much less a graduating senior, 17, 18 years old, because, well, I thought I could, but I wasn't trained and licensed to do such. Delegate Keys Gaber.
Thank you. I have 2 questions. Well, one question, maybe a comment. The first one was in the description that was provided in the beginning, it listed persons who might be eligible for this as someone who had nearly completed a theater curriculum. I'm not sure what nearly means, so I was wondering if I could get some clarification on that. That's my first question. Is he still here?
Mr. Jackson, are you still here?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't know if that was
Dr. Jackson, sorry, Dr. Jackson.
No, you're fine. I didn't know if that was directed towards Mr. McKinley or myself.
Oh,
I think that was from,
Whomever can answer the question. I'm sorry.
yeah, I mean, I'll take a stab at it. I think from the presentation that was provided, they're saying nearly, and I think Mr. McKinley alluded to this before, that in order to be able to pass one of these assessments, it's likely. I think those were the words off of the ETS presentation, but that it's likely that they
No,
have.
it said nearly. That's the reason I'm asking the question.
Right. Was it in the presentation?
It was in the presentation today.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So in the ETS presentation, it said nearly, and so I'm basing this off of the information that Mr. McKinley shared, that in order to pass let's say that assessment in particular, you would have to have significant background knowledge, information, and as he noted, you would likely have had significant experience in that area in order to be able to pass such an assessment. Mr. McKinley, am I
Yeah, I'm just
hitting on
trying
that?
I'm trying to find where it said nearly pass. I'm just in my presentation I shared today.
I didn't copy it. That's the word I read. That's the reason I'm using that word.
Okay. Um,
There were 3 or 4 things listed. Well, I can go to my second question because it's connected to that. As someone who's been involved in oversight of an administration for a large school system, I do think we need definitions for that, because when it comes down to a situation where there has been a problem, those are the things that would be examined as to whether the system had taken appropriate steps to protect children in that situation. Um, and so I have the similar concerns that everybody has, but that has been expressed thus far. But that is my concern. If we don't know what specifically that background is, those are the kind of the protections that are the things that we would look at. But I'm also concerned about, I think there was a comment about principals being involved, providing oversight. In my experience, those principals are relying upon the expertise of the people that they have hired. So that raises another flag for me with respect to assuring folks that those who have the knowledge that are necessary in that setting, um, that they are able to exercise that expertise in that particular setting. What ends up happening in situations like this when something does go wrong is, well, I thought they knew. And the other person says, well, I thought they knew and I thought you looked at it. And it really does put the school system in a bad position. So I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you.
I found the spot that I think that you're referring to, Delegate Keys. It's on the slide 14, Mr. McKinley. It says typical candidate, nearly completed an undergraduate or graduate theater education degree. That's probably what you're referring to. And it was talking about theater. It was on the first slide after the theater title slide.
Okay.
That is
I
correct.
mean
Thank you.
You're
so
welcome.
that's just in reference to a candidate that's matriculating through a program. They may have not actually graduated before they take the assessment. So that's really just in reference to when the candidate is going to take a test. They may take it in order to student teach, depending on the institution. They may take it during their student teaching experience. They may take it after they graduate, depending on whatever Virginia or the EPP in Virginia standards are around completing an assessment. But that's just in reference to the timing for a candidate and when they take the exam. So nearly completed, again, just refers to the timing of when a candidate is going to complete a test. It might be in their last semester, it might be after they graduate.
So I guess I'm more confused now because I think I thought what we were talking about is people who perhaps are teachers in other areas who now want to be certified in theater. Is that what we're talking about?
That that is correct, but I'm just what all I'm saying is that this test was developed for candidates that are in a theater major or candidates that are in a agriculture major, candidates that are in a school librarian major. And I think part of the conversation today is, can we use this assessment as an endorsement for other teachers that may already be certified in another area so that they can add on a theater or add on whatever the assessment may be. But this test was designed for teacher candidates to help them prove their proficiency, prove that they have the knowledge and skills to be a teacher in this subject area.
Brian, do you want to just give a real quick explanation on why an assessment, I mean, how you can use these assessments, like, let's just say the math, the chemistry type situation? Because if this were to be approved and go forward and the board approve it and all that, it would allow this assessment to be used the same way we use other alternative assessments.
Sure, exactly. So even as Mr. McKinley alluded to before, some states, including Virginia, will adopt certain assessments to give a candidate, a teaching candidate or a previously licensed teacher, an opportunity to add endorsements to their license. Typically, you see that with secondary endorsements. It can't be done with others that have specific content requirements. For example, like elementary education, there are going to be courses that you need to take, including an assessment. But there are several secondary endorsements, for example, biology, chemistry, earth and space science. So if I'm a chemistry teacher, I'm endorsing chemistry, but my school has a need for me to teach earth and space science, I can take that assessment if I have, enough knowledge, if I'm prepared, and I can take that, and if I pass it, I can apply to our office, Virginia Department of Education, to add that endorsement to their license. So then they're able to teach other subject areas. Interestingly, and I think why there's so much rich discussion about these 3 endorsements is that one of the initial reasons we brought this to the table last year, and I believe they had even been considered, at least in talk, in years prior, just hadn't made it all the way through the ABTEL process. So we brought them back. And then there were some questions, like I said, in the breakout sessions after, so that's why we're talking about it again today, that these assessments are a little bit different. And there are genuinely a variety of different reasons why I think there was interest in at least reviewing these assessments for an option for somebody who wants to teach in these areas. Schools, one, for these 3 are having a hard time filling a lot of these positions. And so I think even folks on the board, our office sometimes get questions about, hey, is there possibility of having an assessment? We have a candidate who has a different degree, let's say, in the agriculture field. This is what we hear. So I want to be very careful not to project. Licensures not projecting their own feelings or thoughts on this, and Brian's not projecting his own feelings or thoughts on this. But we would get feedback, for example, saying we have a candidate, they're perfect, they have all this experience, they have a degree in some related agriculture field, but they don't have, and they've gone and let's say they've completed an endorsement and something else, so they have their license, but they're not able to go back and take all of this extra coursework to satisfy the very specific, I'm just using agriculture as an example, endorsement. And they would say, is there an assessment that they can take? Because they know there are other assessments, as I just mentioned, that you can take in order to add an endorsement. And that's part of where some of this comes from. In other cases, it's somebody who's just interested in adding it. And they were just, curious to see if there's an assessment to be able to add that endorsement. But again, I think in most cases, especially for these 3, it's a need coming from a division. They're saying that they have a candidate they'd like to consider, but there's too much coursework from the coursework option, kind of alternate route option, to satisfy the endorsement requirements. Could there be a consideration for an assessment to satisfy the coursework? But obviously, there are lots of concerns specifically for these 3, and I think 2 of them really in particular where there's enhanced kind of safety risk, and I think that's what leads to this rich discussion. But Rob, that's essentially where all of this comes from. Just whether we have school divisions that have candidates that they think are eligible, but there's too much coursework for them to complete, and they're saying, hey, could we consider an assessment? Or already established educators saying, hey, I'd really like to add this assessment, but I don't want to go back and take all this coursework. But those are just reasons why this would have come to the board, but certainly not an argument for or against whether or not these very specific subject areas or endorsements should have the assessment as an option.
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks.
Rob, if I may follow up, please.
Yes.
I guess what I have a concern from hearing this discussion, and as well as my background, is that there doesn't appear to be a distinction between someone having the skills to do all the things that have been mentioned here by Dr. Jones and others that raise safety concerns, or particular things where expertise is required to make sure that people are safe in that environment. There doesn't appear to be a distinction based on this test that we're talking about, say with respect to agriculture and theater, particularly, so that when the public examines what we did, they know that those considerations were taken into account. I understand the concern about teacher shortages. It's a nationwide problem. But I also understand that public education is under a great deal of scrutiny, or can be, particularly when something goes wrong or a child gets hurt. So I think that's, in a nutshell, what my concern is, and I present that for consideration.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Mr. McKinley, you want to finish off your presentation?
Rob, Dr. Cox
I-
has his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did not see Dr. Cox's hand.
And this could be Rob or Ron, either one, but are these the only 3 endorsements that don't have any kind of assessment that goes along with them?
No, there are several others. There's quite a few actually that just haven't ever come up before. These were 3 that even when I came in to the agency were brought to me as assessments that I think were in discussion. And I think during maybe an extensive amount of transition, they just never came to the ABTEL board. And so that's why we brought them the first time. And I think at that time, those discussions were around teacher shortages and divisions expressing, desire, is this a possibility? So yeah, but Andy, or Dr. Cox, yes, of course, there are several other endorsements that don't have an assessment approved.
Okay. Well, and that's something too that I think has been mentioned, and I just wanted to double check, is because certainly 90% of the endorsements that we have, there is some kind of a measure of content pedagogy that goes along with it. I think, what I worry about is that, when we add a test like this, we're hoping that the training that somebody received in another endorsement will carry over to help them with this new endorsement. And that may be putting a whole lot of pressure on a test. I guess my mind too goes to that, whenever I go to my doctor, or let's say it's an oncologist who's board certified in that, I don't know that if they were to sit down and take a test in surgery, that just because they passed the test in surgery, that I want them operating on me, because there's a certain amount of practice and experience and mentorship that goes along with that residency or whatever it is. I know that's not a good example, but that's kind of something that goes into my head, that we're relying on the initial practicum or student teaching or whatever it is to carry over to endorsements that may or may not match. I think I've never had a problem if somebody has a pre-K through 6 endorsement and they want to take the middle school math tests and they pass it. Well, then, they're fine to add that endorsement, because they are very, very similar. And these seem to be very, very different than what that initial training would be. But then again, I was thinking too, and this is why I asked the question, if these were the only endorsements that didn't have any kind of assessment to go along with it, then that kind of would make a bit more sense. But anyhow, all right, Malik, I'm turning it back over to you.
Thank you. No, just a last note here. Again, I'll make the offer that if there's a subset of this committee that wants to specifically look at questions, because it sounds like this is going to continue to point back to what is the actual content on the test that speaks to those concerns or those challenges that an agricultural teacher or a school librarian or a theater teacher will face. I can again provide an interactive practice test to give you examples of those questions, or if you would like to actually see each live exam that's out in the marketplace right now, we can also provide that for you as well, so that you can actually see questions, because I think until you actually know exactly what's on the test, there probably will continue to be questions about the specific content. So just making that as an offer, if there are folks on the committee that would like to see actual test questions from this category, from each one of these exams, we could certainly provide that for you.
But Mr. McKinley, I want to make sure I'm clear about saying it's performance based. So the reiteration of I can sit down and I can take a multiple choice true, false, fill in the blank is one thing, but I need to be able to perform the task and meet the minimum proficiencies and standards. I think that's the greater component that everyone was looking for. And I know that I'd heard earlier where, you know, some folks would get that coursework. And I also heard later on that some people just want the test to avoid the coursework. That's why I think I can speak for the committee by the shakes of the heads. That's the issue. We cannot substitute testing for performance-based behavior because that performance-based says I not only know it, but I can demonstrate it. And if I can't demonstrate it as the instructor, how can I perform that task for the student to get them to do so satisfactorily as well? So if there's a performance component, I think that would resolve what keeps them back here. But we can't say that we use it as a substitute because we're trying to avoid the coursework that's actually going to teach us how to do the skill or the task. Is that what I am understanding, I am hearing from the shaking of the heads? Yes. Thank you.
Dr. Jones, are you ready to move on to the next presentation?
Yes, sir. However, we have been sitting for quite a while, and I know that I've seen some folks with a cup or two of their preferred beverage. So could we maybe take a 10-minute resolve yourself and come back maybe at a quarter after, fresh and ready to proceed, if that is okay?
That'd be fine.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, we'll go ahead and reconvene at 10:15. We're currently on break.